The morning sun cast long shadows across New Haven's glass towers when the first scream split the air. Office workers pressed their faces against windows, their coffee cups forgotten as something massive blotted out the sky above the financial. District. The Dragon was beyond anything the city had ever seen. Its body stretched 300 feet from snout to tail, covered in scales that gleamed black like polished obsidian. Wings that could span an entire city block beat slowly, creating wind gusts that shattered windows 40 stories below. Golden eyes, each the size of a car, surveyed the city with an intelligence that made every witness feel small and helpless. Commander Jake Harrison was reviewing training reports in his office at Central Command when the emergency alarms began there. Wailing song. His cybernetic left arm, a replacement from the Proxima campaign 3 years ago, automatically interfaced with the building's communication system. Data flowed directly into his brain through the neural link behind his ear. The reports were impossible to believe. Satellite imagery showed the creature landing on the Meridian Tower, the city's tallest building. The dragon's weight caused the entire structure to groan and sway. Then came the breath weapon. Jake watched through security cameras as the dragon opened its mouth and released something that wasn't quite fire and wasn't quite lightning. The energy beam cut through steel and concrete like they were paper. The top 15 floors of the Meridian Tower simply vanished, turned to glowing particles that drifted away on the wind. But the dragon was precise. The beam stopped exactly where the offices ended and the mechanical floors began. No people died in that first attack, though Jake couldn't understand why. His office door burst open without a knock. Mayor Linda Torres rushed in, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. Behind her came General Peter Kane from the Planetary Defense Force, his uniform crisp despite the chaos outside. "Jake, we need you," the mayor said without preamble. Her voice shook slightly, though she tried to hide it. "This thing is destroying our city, and nothing we have can touch it." Jake stood and walked to his window. The dragon had moved to the Harrison Memorial Bridge, the structure that connected the old city to the new districts. It perched there like some ancient gargoyle, its head turning slowly as it studied the fleeing crowds below. Something cold touched Jake's spine as he watched the creature. The way it moved seemed familiar, though he couldn't place why. When the dragon turned its massive head toward his building, Jake felt those golden eyes lock onto his own across the miles of space between them. "What do we know about it?" Jake asked, not turning from the window. General Kane activated a holographic display in the center of the office. Images of ancient texts and archaeological findings filled the air between them. Dragons haven't been seen for over 500 years. The last confirmed sighting was on Kepler Prime during the early colonial period. Most scientists thought they were extinct. Where did it come from? Jake's cybernetic arm interfaced with the hologram, pulling up more detailed scans of the creature. Unknown. It appeared over the northern mountains yesterday evening. Long-range sensors picked up an energy signature, but nothing that suggested something this large was approaching. Mayor Torres moved beside Jake at the window. It destroyed 3 suburbs last night, completely leveled them. But here's the strange part. She paused, watching the dragon's movements. All the destruction happened after emergency services evacuated the areas, like it was waiting for people to leave. Jake turned to study her face. "You think it's intelligent?" "More than intelligent. It's careful. Every attack has avoided schools, hospitals, anywhere children might be. The destruction looks random, but it's not." The general cleared his throat. "Which brings us to why we need you, Commander. You're the best we have. 3 interplanetary campaigns, 47 successful operations, and you've never failed a mission." Jake looked back at the dragon. It had lifted its head and was staring directly at the command building again. A low sound rumbled across the city, something between a roar and a song. The vibration made the building's windows hum. The sound triggered something in Jake's mind. A flash of memory, brief and painful. A young voice calling his name. Fire and smoke. The taste of fear in his mouth. Then nothing. The memory vanished as quickly as it had come, leaving only a dull ache behind his eyes. What kind of weapons are we talking about? Jake asked, forcing himself to focus on the mission. General's expression grew grim. Everything we have. Plasma rifles, molecular disruptors, even tactical nuclear devices if necessary. The orbital platforms are being prepared as backup. You want to nuke our own city? Only if there's no other choice. This creature could destroy everything we've built here. Millions of lives are at stake. Jake watched the dragon spread its wings and take flight again. It moved with surprising grace for something so large, circling the downtown area in a slow spiral. More buildings showed, scorch marks from its energy breath, but again, Jake noticed the precision. The dragon was destroying infrastructure, not people. I'll need a full tactical analysis, Jake said finally. Everything we know about dragon physiology, behavior patterns, anything that might give us an advantage. Already prepared. The mayor handed him a data chip. Our xenobiology department worked through the night. Most of it is speculation based on fossil records and ancient accounts, but it's the best we have. Jake slotted the chip into his cybernetic arm's data port. Information flooded his consciousness in a controlled stream. Dragons were apex predators, genetically engineered by an extinct alien race as living weapons. They possessed incredible strength, nearly impenetrable scales, and the ability to generate focused energy attacks. Most importantly, they were highly intelligent, capable of learning and adaptation. But the files also mentioned something else. Dragons were social creatures, despite their solitary nature. They formed strong emotional bonds, particularly with family members. The loneliness of being the last of their kind could drive them to desperate behavior. How long do I have? Jake asked. The general checked his chronometer. The creature has been relatively quiet for the past 6 hours, but our analysts believe it's gathering strength for a major attack. Based on the pattern of destruction, we estimate you have perhaps 18 hours before it targets the city center, where the evacuation shelters are located. Jake nodded and began running through tactical scenarios in his mind. His military training had prepared him for impossible missions, but nothing quite like this. Fighting other humans, even alien species, involved predictable strategies and known weaknesses. Dragons were something entirely different. There's one more thing, the mayor said quietly. A dragon has been ... calling out. Our audio specialists think it's trying to communicate, but we can't decipher the language. Calling out to who? We don't know. But the call started right after you were assigned to this mission. Jake felt that cold touch along his spine again. He looked out at the dragon, now perched on the ruins of a communications tower. As if sensing his attention, the creature raised its massive head and released another of those rumbling calls. This time, Jake didn't just hear it. He felt it resonate in his bones, in the deepest parts of his memory where old pain lived in shadows. The headache behind his eyes grew stronger, and for just a moment, he could swear he heard someone calling his name, someone who sounded very young and very afraid. I'll take the mission, Jake said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. But I do this my way. No interference from orbital command, no backup plans involving nuclear weapons. Give me a chance to end this without destroying half the city. The mayor and general exchanged glances before nodding their agreement. Jake gathered his gear and prepared to hunt the dragon, not knowing he was about to discover the most important truth of his life. Jake's military vehicle moved through the empty streets like a ghost through a graveyard. The northern districts of New Haven looked like a war zone, but not the kind Jake remembered from his campaigns on distant worlds. This destruction was different, more focused, almost artistic in its precision. He stopped the vehicle at what used to be Pine Street Elementary School. The building stood untouched, its bright yellow walls and cheerful playground equipment looking strange against the backdrop of melted asphalt and twisted metal that surrounded it. Every structure within 2 blocks had been reduced to slag, but the school remained perfect. Jake stepped out of his vehicle and activated his tactical suit's sensors. The advanced armor read environmental data and fed it directly to his brain. Through his cybernetic interface, radiation levels were normal. Air quality was fine. Temperature readings showed the area had been exposed to intense heat just hours ago, but now everything was cooling rapidly. He walked to the edge of the destruction zone and knelt down. The ground here had been turned to glass, smooth and black, like a mirror. Jake touched it with his gloved hand and felt residual warmth through the suit's protective layers. Whatever the dragon's breath weapon was, it generated temperatures that could melt steel in seconds. But again, Jake noticed the careful patterns. The destruction formed perfect circles around buildings that held children during the day. Schools, daycare centers, even a small hospital's pediatric wing, all untouched, all protected by invisible barriers of precise destruction. Jake's calm system crackled to life. Command to Hunter 1. What's your status? Moving through the northern zone, Jake reported. The damage is extensive, but selective. Something's not right here. Explain. Jake stood and began walking deeper into the wasteland. This isn't random destruction. The dragon is choosing what to destroy and what to save. It's following some kind of rules. General Kane's voice came through the com with static interference. Dragons don't follow rules, Commander. They're killing machines. Then this one didn't read the manual, Jake replied. He stopped at an intersection where 4 streets met. Here, the destruction formed a perfect X pattern, with safe zones at each corner where small shops and cafes sat undamaged. I'm looking at surgical precision. This creature knows exactly what it's doing. Jake continued north, following the trail of glass and melted metal. His suit's tracking systems showed the dragon's path through the city like a glowing line on his helmet display. The creature had moved methodically, street by street, destroying with purpose. The trail led to Riverside Park, a large green space that separated the residential areas from the industrial district. Jake expected to find more destruction, but instead he found something that made him stop and stare. The park was not only undamaged, it was improved. Dying trees had been somehow healed, their leaves green and full. Dead grass had been restored to perfect health. Even the old playground equipment looked newer, as if someone had carefully repaired and painted every piece. Jake walked to the center of the park, where a small pond reflected the afternoon sky. The water was crystal clear, cleaner than it had been in decades. Fish swam in the depths, species that had been extinct in the city's polluted waterways. For years, his comm system buzzed with an incoming transmission from the science team. Commander, we're picking up unusual energy readings from your location. The entire park is showing signs of accelerated biological restoration. Copy that, Jake said, but his attention was focused on something else. At the edge of the pond stood a memorial statue, a bronze figure of a man in a lab coat. The nameplate read, Dr. Carl Harrison, Pioneer in Human Genetic Research. Jake's blood went cold. Harrison was his surname, but he had never heard of this Dr. Carl Harrison. His adoptive parents had told him the name came from a distant relative, someone not important enough to remember. But seeing the statue triggered something in his mind, another flash of buried memory. A man in a white coat, smiling and reaching out his hand. A warm voice saying, "Come here, Jake. I want to show you something amazing." A memory vanished as quickly as it came, leaving Jake with a growing headache and more questions than answers. He continued following the dragon's trail, which led to the industrial district's edge. Here, the creature had destroyed factories and warehouses with the same careful precision. Chemical plants that polluted the river were gone, turned to glass. Factories that dumped waste into the air had been reduced to nothing. But smaller businesses, places where people worked with their hands to build things, remained untouched. Jake's suit detected movement ahead. Something large was shifting in the ruins of what had been the city's main power plant. The dragon had made its temporary home in the wreckage, using the metal debris to create a crude nest. Jake moved carefully, using his military training to approach without being detected. His plasma rifle was charged and ready, but he kept it lowered. Something about this situation felt wrong for a direct attack. He reached a position where he could observe the dragon clearly. The creature was even more magnificent up close. Its scales weren't just black, but seemed to absorb light, creating an effect like looking into deep space. The wings were folded against its body, and its massive head rested on what had been the power plant's main generator. But the dragon wasn't sleeping. Those golden eyes were open and alert, scanning the area around its nest. Jake realized with a start that the creature had known he was coming long before he arrived. "I know you're there," the dragon said. Jake nearly dropped his weapon. The voice was impossibly deep, like distant thunder, but it spoke perfect English. More than that, there was something familiar about the tone, something that made Jake's heart race for reasons he couldn't understand. "Come out where I can see you," the dragon continued. "I've been waiting for you to find me." Jake stepped out from behind the twisted remains of a delivery truck. He kept his rifle ready, but pointed it at the ground. "You can talk." "I can do many things," the dragon replied. Its head lifted from the generator, and Jake saw intelligence burning in those golden eyes. "The question is, can you remember?" "Remember what?" The dragon studied Jake's face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You look older than I expected, harder. The years haven't been kind to you, Jake." Jake's finger moved to his rifles. "Trigger, how do you know my name?" "I know more than your name." The dragon's voice carried a sadness that seemed to echo in Jake's chest. "I know you used to be afraid of the dark. I know you liked strawberry ice cream, but hated chocolate. I know you had a scar on your left knee from when you fell off your bike trying to impress the girl next door." Jake's hands began to shake. "That's impossible. You're guessing." "Am I?" The dragon moved closer, its massive form casting Jake in shadow. "I know you used to have nightmares about fire and smoke. I know you wake up some nights, calling for someone you can't remember. I know you have a gap in your memory from when you were 12 years old." Jake's rifle clattered to the ground. His legs felt weak, and he had to sit down on a piece of debris. "Who are you? Think, Jake. Look at me and really think. Don't you recognize me?" Jake forced himself to study the dragon's features. The shape of the head, the way it held itself, even the tone of voice. All of it felt familiar in a way that made his chest ache with old pain. "I used to be smaller," the dragon said softly. "Much smaller. You used to read me bedtime stories about knights and princesses. You taught me how to tie my shoes. You promised you would always protect me." The words hit Jake like physical blows. More memories surfaced, brief flashes of a life he had buried so deep he had convinced himself it never existed. A research station among the stars. Parents who worked with alien technology. A younger brother who looked up to him like he was the greatest hero in the universe. Damon? Jake whispered. The dragon's massive head nodded slowly. "Hello, big brother." I've been looking for you for a very long time." Jake stared at the massive dragon before him, his mind struggling to accept what he was hearing. The creature that had terrorized his city, that had been labeled a monster by everyone in command, was claiming to be his little brother. The brother he had been told died 30 years ago. "You're lying," Jake said, but his voice shook. "Damon died in the accident. They told me he died." The dragon's golden eyes grew sad. "They told you many things that weren't true. Do you remember the research station? Europa Station 7? Our parents worked there, studying ways to make humans stronger, better able to survive in space." Jake's head began to pound. Images flashed through his mind like broken pieces of a puzzle, a sterile white laboratory. His father in a lab coat, excited about some new discovery. His mother working late into the night, her face lit by computer screens showing DNA sequences and genetic maps. "I remember some things," Jake admitted, "but it's all fuzzy, like looking through thick glass." "The trauma did that," Damon explained. "When something terrible happens, the mind protects itself by hiding the memories. But I can help you remember." Damon moved closer, and Jake forced himself not to run. The dragon was enormous, but there was something gentle in the way it moved, careful not to frighten him more than necessary. "Close your eyes," Damon said softly. "Trust me like you used to." Jake hesitated, then closed his eyes. Immediately, his mind was flooded with images, memories that had been locked away for 3 decades, rushing back like water through a broken dam. He was 12 years old again, standing in the observation deck of Europa Station 7. Through the large windows, he could see Jupiter's massive form dominating the sky, its red spots staring down at them like a giant eye. His little brother Damon stood beside him, only 8 years old, his face pressed against the glass in wonder. "Jake, do you think we'll ever go home to Earth?" young Damon had asked. "Sure we will," Jake had replied, putting his arm around his brother's shoulders. "Mom and Dad's work is almost finished. They said maybe next year." But their parents' work was more dangerous than they had told their sons. Dr. Carl Harrison and Dr. Monica Harrison were pushing the boundaries of human genetics, using alien DNA samples to create enhancements that could help humanity survive. In hostile environments, they believed they were on the edge of a breakthrough that would change the human race forever. The memory shifted, becoming darker. Jake saw himself 3 months later, older and more worried. Their parents had been working around the clock, and strange things had begun happening on the station. Equipment would malfunction without explanation. Computer systems would crash and display alien symbols. And sometimes, late at night, they could hear sounds in the walls, like something alive moving through the ventilation systems. "The samples were more active than we thought," Jake heard his father say to his mother in hushed tones. "They're trying to communicate, to connect with something." "Should we stop the project?" his mother had asked. "We're too close to a breakthrough. Think what this could mean for humanity's future in space. We could adapt to any environment, survive on any world." Jake opened his eyes and found Damon watching him carefully. "You remember now, don't you?" "The alien raiders," Jake whispered. "They came because of the research." "Yes. The DNA samples your parents were using came from a species that wasn't extinct like everyone thought. They were dormant, waiting. When the samples became active, they sent a signal across space. The raiders came to reclaim what they considered stolen property. The memory of that terrible night came back in full force." Jake was in his room, trying to sleep despite the sounds of his parents working in the lab below. Then the alarm started. Screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere, and his father's voice came over the intercom, tight with fear. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have hostile contact. This is not a drill." Jake had grabbed Damon from his bed and they had run. Through the corridors together, the station shaking around them as the alien ships attacked. They could hear weapons fire and screaming from other sections of the facility. They found their parents in the main laboratory, frantically trying to destroy their research before the raiders could capture it. The lab was chaos, with computer screens showing alien genetic patterns and transformation sequences, while emergency systems tried to contain breaches in the station's hull. "Boys, you need to get to the escape pods," their mother had shouted over the noise of battle. "Not without you," Jake had yelled back. "We have to finish this," their father said, his hands flying over the control panels. "If this research falls into the wrong hands, it could be used as a weapon against humanity." That was when the raiders broke through the laboratory's main door. They were tall, insect-like creatures with multiple arms and eyes that glowed with cold intelligence. They moved with deadly purpose, heading straight for the genetic samples and transformation equipment. Jake grabbed Damon's hand and tried to pull him toward the emergency exit, but his little brother broke free and ran toward their parents. One of the raiders raised a weapon, aiming at the boy. "Damon, no." Jake screamed. Their father threw himself between the raider and his youngest son, taking the energy blast meant for Damon. As Dr. Harrison fell, his hand hit the emergency activation switch for the transformation chamber. The alien DNA samples, now fully active and responding to the presence of their original species, erupted from their containment units. Damon was caught in the middle of the genetic storm. The alien materials engulfed him, rewriting his DNA in seconds, changing him from a human boy into something entirely new. The transformation was supposed to take weeks of careful preparation, but now it happened all at once. Violent and uncontrolled. Jake watched in horror as his little brother's body began to change and grow. The process was clearly painful, and Damon screamed in a voice that was already becoming something other than human. "Jake, help me." Damon cried out, but Jake was already being pulled away by station security personnel who had arrived to evacuate the survivors. The last thing Jake saw before the emergency bulkhead sealed was his brother, no longer recognizable as human, curled up in the wreckage of the laboratory as alien genetic material continued to reshape his body. The station exploded 3 minutes later. The official report said that young Damon Harrison had been killed in the blast. His body never recovered. Jake was taken to Earth, adopted by a military family, and the trauma of that night was buried so deep in his mind that he convinced himself it had been a nightmare. "I looked for you," Damon said, bringing Jake back to the present. "For 30 years, I searched every human colony, every military base, every city on Earth. The transformation gave me abilities I never asked for, but it also gave me time. I age slowly now, and I'm much stronger than I was." Jake stared at his brother, seeing past the dragon's form to the frightened 8-year-old boy who had been caught in an impossible situation. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you." "You were just a child yourself," Damon replied. "There was nothing you could have done. But I never stopped hoping I would find you again." "Why did you attack the city? Why destroy so much?" Damon's expression grew ashamed. "I didn't know how to find you. I knew you had become a soldier, but there are millions of soldiers in the human military. So I did something that would force the best soldier to come looking for me. I became a threat that only the greatest warrior would be sent to face. You could have just asked. Would they have believed me? Would they have brought Jake Harrison to meet with a dragon claiming to be his dead brother? Or would they have shot me on sight?" Jake had to admit his brother was probably right. The military's first response to any unknown threat was usually overwhelming force. "I was careful," Damon continued. "I made sure no people were hurt. I protected the places where children would be, because I remembered how much you loved children. I tried to make it clear that I wasn't a mindless monster. Jake looked around at the destruction surrounding them, seeing it now with new understanding. This wasn't the random rampage of a beast. This was a desperate attempt at communication, from someone who had been alone for 3 decades. What happens now? Jake asked. Jake's comm system exploded with noise before he could answer Damon's question. General Kane's voice cut through the static, sharp with urgency and anger. Commander Harrison, report your status immediately. Satellite surveillance shows you in direct contact with the target. Are you injured? Jake looked at his brother, whose massive dragon form tensed at the sound of the general's voice. Damon's golden eyes showed fear for the first time since their reunion. I'm fine, General, Jake replied carefully. The situation is more complex than we initially understood. Complex how? You have your orders, Commander. Eliminate the threat. Jake's hand moved to his plasma rifle, still lying on the ground where he had dropped it. Damon saw the gesture and pulled back slightly, pain flickering across his draconic features. You have to do your duty, Damon said quietly. I understand. I've been alone for 30 years. I can be alone forever if it means you're safe. The resignation in his brother's voice hit Jake harder than any weapon. Here was the little boy who used to build model spaceships with him, who would crawl into his bed during thunderstorms, who had looked up to him like he was the greatest hero in the universe. Now that same person was ready to die just to protect Jake's reputation and career. General, I need more time to assess the situation, Jake said into his comm. Negative, Commander. Intelligence indicates the creature is preparing for a major assault on the civilian shelters. We cannot wait any longer. Through his suit's communication system, Jake could hear other voices in the background at Command Central. Mayor Torres was arguing with someone about evacuation procedures. Scientists were debating the dragon's behavior patterns. And underneath it all, he could hear the sound of orbital weapons charging, their energy signatures building toward firing. Readiness. Jake, Damon said softly, there's something else I need to tell you. I didn't come to Earth just to find you. Jake's attention snapped back to his brother. What do you mean? The aliens who attacked our family station, they're not finished with humanity. I've been tracking their movements across the galaxy for years. They're planning something big, and Earth is their primary target. What kind of something? Damon's massive head turned toward the sky, his enhanced senses picking up signals that Jake's equipment couldn't detect. They call it a harvest. They want to collect human genetic material for their experiments, the same way our parents collected their DNA samples. But they need humans alive and healthy for the process to work. Jake felt cold dread settling in his stomach. How many are coming? Thousands of ships, an entire invasion fleet. They should arrive within the next few days. The comm system crackled again, but this time it was Mayor Torres speaking. Commander, we're reading massive energy buildups from the orbital defense platforms. General Kane has authorized a nuclear strike on your position. You have 10 minutes to clear the area. Jake looked at the industrial wasteland around them, then at his brother. They're going to nuke us both. I can survive it, Damon said. My scales can withstand most energy weapons, but you can't. You need to leave now. I'm not leaving you again. Jake, be reasonable. You have a life, a career, people who depend on you. I'm just a monster that's been hiding in space for 30 years. You're my brother, Jake said firmly. He reached down and picked up his plasma rifle, but instead of aiming it at Damon, he slung it across his back. And I'm not letting anyone hurt you. Jake activated his comm system on an open channel, broadcasting to every military frequency he could access. This is Commander Jake Harrison to all forces. I am declaring this area under my personal protection. Any attack on this position will be considered an act of aggression against a ranking military officer. General Kane's voice came back immediately, filled with fury. "Commander, you are relieved of duty. Stand down immediately." "Negative, sir. I am operating under Special Protocol 7, Protection of Critical Intelligence Assets." "What intelligence?" "Assets?" Jake looked at Damon, who was listening to every word with growing amazement. "The dragon has information about an imminent alien invasion. Killing him would eliminate our only source of intelligence about the enemy's plans and capabilities." It was a desperate gamble, but Jake knew military bureaucracy well enough to understand that the mention of an alien invasion would at least force them to pause and consider the situation. Mayor Torres's voice joined the conversation. "Commander, explain this invasion threat." Jake quickly relayed what Damon had told him about the alien harvest fleet. As he spoke, he could see his brother's expression change from resignation to hope. For the first time in 30 years, someone was listening to Damon's warnings about the returning aliens. "How do we know this creature is telling the truth?" General Kane demanded. "Because 30 years ago, this same alien species attacked a human research station and killed my parents," Jake said. "The dragon is my brother, transformed by alien genetic experiments. He's been tracking these aliens across space ever since." The comm channel went silent for several long moments. Jake could imagine the chaos at Command Central as officers tried to process this impossible information. Finally, Mayor Torres spoke again. "Commander, are you saying you've known about this creature's identity all along?" "No, ma'am. I only learned the truth a few minutes ago when my suppressed memories returned. But I am certain of what I'm telling you now." "This is insane, General." Kane interrupted. "You're protecting a hostile alien life form based on recovered memories and wild claims about an invasion. I'm ordering the strike to proceed." "Wait," another voice cut in. It was Dr. Helen Carter from the city's xenobiology department. "General, if there's even a small chance the creature is telling the truth about an invasion, we need to investigate. Further, a nuclear strike would eliminate our only potential source of information about alien technology and tactics." Jake felt a surge of gratitude toward the scientist. Dr. Carter was giving them precious time to figure out their next move. "Furthermore," Dr. Carter continued, "the creature's behavior patterns support the claim that it's trying to communicate rather than destroy. The selective nature of the attacks, the avoidance of civilian casualties, the apparent attempts to draw out specific military personnel. All of this suggests intelligence and purpose beyond simple aggression." Damon moved closer to Jake, his massive form providing shelter from the wind that was picking up across the industrial wasteland. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for believing me, for protecting me." "We're family," Jake replied. "That's what family does." But even as he said the words, Jake knew their situation was desperate. He had bought them time, but not much. The military would not wait forever, and his own career was probably over regardless of how this ended. He had chosen his brother over his duty, and there would be consequences. "Jake," Damon said, "there's something else. The alien fleet, they're not just coming for Earth. They're coming for me specifically." "What do you mean?" "The transformation I went through, it made me part of their species genetically. But I retained my human consciousness and memories. To them, I'm either a failed experiment that needs to be destroyed, or a successful one that needs to be captured and studied." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Not only did he have to protect his brother from his own military, he had to prepare for an alien invasion that was targeting them personally. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. Damon's head turned toward space again, his enhanced senses reading signals from far beyond Earth's atmosphere. "Not long, maybe 2 days at most. They're accelerating their approach. I think they detected my presence on Earth." Jake made his decision. He opened his comm channel again, this time broadcasting on emergency frequencies to every government and military installation on the planet. This is Commander Jake Harrison with a Priority Alpha threat warning. Earth is facing imminent invasion by hostile alien forces. Estimated arrival time is 48 hours. All planetary defense forces should prepare for large-scale assault. I repeat, this is not a drill. The comm system exploded with questions and demands for clarification, but Jake switched it off. He had done what he could to warn Earth. Now, he and Damon would have to face whatever came next together. Are you ready for this? Jake asked his brother. Damon's golden eyes burned with determination that reminded Jake of the brave little boy he had once known. I've been preparing for this fight for 30 years. The question is, are you ready to fight beside a dragon? Jake checked his weapons and activated his suit's combat systems. I've never backed down from a fight in my life. I'm not starting now. In the distance, they could see military vehicles approaching their position, but Jake no longer cared about court-martials or career consequences. His brother needed him, and Earth needed both of them. The real battle was about to begin. The sky above New Haven began to burn. Jake watched through his suit's sensors as dozens of alien ships tore through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. But these weren't meteors bringing destruction. They were something far worse. The harvest. Fleet had arrived early, and they were heading straight for the city. They detected my signal faster than I expected, Damon said, his massive head turned toward the approaching ships. I'm sorry, Jake. I brought this fight to your home. Jake checked his weapons one final time. His plasma rifle hummed with energy, and his suit's targeting systems were already locking onto the nearest alien vessels. You didn't bring this fight here. You brought the warning. Without you, these things would have caught us completely unprepared. The first alien ship landed in what used to be the financial district. It was huge, bigger than a city block, with a hull that seemed to shift and change color like living skin. Smaller ships began pouring out of it, each one carrying alien soldiers, ready to begin their harvest of human genetic material. Jake's comm system came alive with emergency broadcasts from across the city. Military units were scrambling to respond, but they had no idea what they were facing. The alien weapons were unlike anything in human experience, firing beams of energy that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. Commander Harrison, came General Kane's voice over the comm, tight with desperation. We need you and your ... asset. Our conventional weapons aren't effective against these things. Jake almost smiled at the change in tone. 30 minutes ago, the general had been ready to nuke them both. Now he was begging for help. What do you need us to do? Jake asked. Stop them. However you can. Jake looked at his brother, who was all ready, spreading his massive wings in preparation for flight. Ready to show these aliens what humanity can do when we work together? Damon's golden eyes blazed with determination. I've been waiting 30 years for this chance. They launched themselves into battle, Jake using his suit's flight systems to keep pace with his brother's powerful wings. Below them, the city was erupting into chaos as alien soldiers poured through the streets, stunning humans with capture weapons and loading them into transport ships. The first alien fighter to engage them learned quickly that this wasn't going to be an easy harvest. Damon's breath weapon, the same energy beam that had destroyed buildings with surgical precision, tore through the alien ship's shields like they were made of paper. The vessel exploded in a shower of debris. It rained down on the empty streets below. Jake followed up with plasma rifle fire, his enhanced targeting systems allowing him to hit weak points in the alien armor that his brother's attacks had exposed. Working together, they destroyed 3 more ships in the first few minutes of combat, but more kept coming. The aliens had brought an entire invasion force, and they weren't going to be stopped by 2 fighters. no matter how skilled or determined. "We need help," Jake said over the comm to General Kane. "Where are our forces?" "Engaging the enemy throughout the city, but we're outgunned. These aliens have technology we can't match." Jake saw an opportunity as a group of alien soldiers cornered a squad of human Marines near the university campus. "Damon, can you give me a ride?" His brother swooped down, and Jake leaped onto Damon's back, something he remembered doing when they were children playing in their family's quarters on Europa Station. But this time, they weren't playing games. Damon dove toward the alien soldiers, and Jake jumped off at the last second, landing among the surprised aliens with his plasma rifle blazing. The human Marines, seeing this impossible rescue, rallied and began fighting back with renewed determination. "Who are you?" asked Sergeant Lisa Wong, the Marine squad leader, as they finished off the last of the alien soldiers. "Commander Jake Harrison," Jake replied. "And that's my brother." Sergeant Wong stared up at the dragon circling overhead. "Your brother is a dragon? It's complicated. Can your squad follow orders without asking too many questions?" "Yes, sir." "Good. We need to coordinate our attacks. These aliens are vulnerable to focused fire on their joint segments. Aim for the connections between their armor plates." As word spread through the military communications network, human forces began adapting their tactics. Jake and Damon moved from battle to battle throughout the city, providing support where it was needed most and teaching soldiers how to fight effectively against the alien technology. But the real turning point came when they reached the main alien command ship that had landed in the city center. This vessel was different from the others, larger and more heavily armed. Jake's sensors detected powerful energy shields that seemed impenetrable. "That's their fleet, Commander," Damon said, as they studied the ship from a safe distance. "If we can take it out, the rest of their forces will be confused and vulnerable. How do we get through those shields?" Damon's expression grew thoughtful. "The aliens who transformed me, they built their technology around genetic locks. The shields will recognize me as one of their enhanced creations. They might let me through." Jake understood immediately. "It's a trap. They want to capture you alive, probably. But it's also our only chance to get close enough to do real damage." Jake made his decision. "Then we go in together. If they want to capture a dragon, they're going to have to deal with both of us." They approached the command ship openly, Damon flying slowly with Jake visible on his back. As expected, the shields parted to allow them through. The aliens wanted their rogue experiment back, and they thought two fighters couldn't possibly threaten their flagship. They were wrong. The moment they landed inside the ship's docking bay, Jake and Damon unleashed everything they had. Jake's plasma rifle cut through alien soldiers, while Damon's breath weapon melted their equipment and weapons. But more importantly, Jake was able to access the ship's computer systems through his cybernetic interface. "I'm downloading their tactical data," Jake reported over the comm to General Kane. "Fleet positions, weapon capabilities, everything. How long do you need?" 2 minutes. Those were the longest 2 minutes of Jake's life. Wave after wave of alien soldiers poured into the docking bay, and even with Damon's help, they were being overwhelmed. Jake's suit was taking damage, and his brother had several wounds from alien energy weapons, but they held their position long enough. Jake transmitted the complete alien tactical database to every human military unit on Earth, giving them the information they needed to target weak points in the alien ships and coordinate effective counterattacks. "Download complete," Jake announced. "Time to go." They fought their way back to Damon's back, and the dragon launched them out of the alien ship just as Jake's final surprise activated. He had planted a feedback virus in the alien computer system, one that would overload their power cores. The command ship exploded behind them in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from orbit. With their command structure destroyed and their tactical advantages eliminated, the alien fleet began to retreat. Human forces, now armed with the knowledge of alien weaknesses, pressed their advantage. Ship after ship was destroyed or damaged as the Harvest Fleet fled back into space. Jake and Damon landed on the roof of City Hall, both exhausted but victorious. Below them, the city was damaged but still standing. More importantly, the people were safe. Mayor Torres was waiting for them on the roof, along with General Kane and a crowd of reporters and city officials. Jake climbed down from his brother's back, expecting to be arrested for disobeying orders. Instead, General Kane saluted him. "Commander Harrison, on behalf of Earth's planetary defense forces, thank you, both of you." Jake looked at his brother, who was trying to make himself look smaller and less threatening for the cameras. "What happens now?" Mayor Torres stepped forward. "Now we rebuild, and we prepare for the future. Your brother has offered to help establish an early warning system for alien threats, and our scientists want to study his transformation to develop better defenses for humanity." "And my military career?" General Kane smiled. "You're being promoted, Commander. Someone needs to lead our new Xenological Defense Division. The job comes with a very unusual posting, though. You'll be working closely with our first non-human officer." Jake looked at Damon, who managed something that might have been a dragon's version of a grin. "I think I can handle that assignment." 3 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Joint Defense Station, watching his brother patrol the space around Earth. Damon had become humanity's guardian, using his enhanced senses to detect threats long before they could reach the planet. The Harrison brothers had found each other again, and together they had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its weapons or technology. It was the ability to adapt, to accept differences, and to stand together against any threat the universe might send their way. Jake's comm system chimed with an incoming message. Another alien signal had been detected at the edge of the solar system, but this one was different. It was a peaceful first contact attempt from a species that had heard about Earth's successful defense against the Harvest Fleet. "Ready for another adventure?" Jake asked his brother over the communication link.